Gary, now I know you talk a little bit about, or a lot about bad bosses, and I've heard you talk about the idea of getting rid of bad bosses. Talk to me about what you really mean when you say that.
Well, you know, when I meet people and you talk about leadership development, it seems like such a cliche after a while. And what really locks people in to understand what we do is I ask them, do you ever have a bad boss? And most people have.
Sure.
And they remember that bad boss. And I tell them, well, I get rid of them. And I get a universal response from people, even when I'm at the counter of Enterprise car rental, and I say that, and they say, well, we could use you around here. Or they ask, how do I do that?
Now, see, I would think the opposite. Like if I was a boss and I sucked, or as you would call it, bad boss more politely than I would, right? And I heard some guy wanting to come in my organization or work with our organization that's like, I get rid of bad bosses, I'd be afraid.
Well, sure, and I can tell you that when I go into organizations, the first person I interview is the CEO. And I can tell in 10 minutes whether I'm going to work with that company or not.
Okay.
Because I interview the CEO and I'm looking for one value out of that CEO.
Which is?
Modesty.
Interesting.
Because without modesty or a little bit of humility, they're not going to be willing to listen to anybody. And we've heard about some of that today.
Right.
And if they really want to develop their team and they want to develop their own leadership development, then they need to first be able to listen to a coach and listen to the opinion of others. And even if it's not my opinion, they need to listen to the opinion of their staff.
Right.
If they're not willing to do that, a red flag to me is when the CEO says, yeah, I need you to work with my staff.
Right.
That's a red flag.
Right.
That tells me immediately who I'm dealing with. And the thing is, for most people, they're bad bosses not because they want to be. They're bad bosses because they don't know how to be good. They know what to do. You want to learn how to be a leader? Read a book.
Right.
You know, you can learn the what. This is what I need to do. So the metaphor that I like to use often.
Yeah, please.
Have you ever had appendicitis?
No.
Oh, good for you. Well, I'll talk to somebody that has.
Okay.
And they say, how bad was it? Oh, it was really bad. What did you do? It said, well, I had it removed. I said, okay, well, why don't you just do it yourself? You know what to do. Well, okay, all right, that's kind of stupid. So,
but I get the point.
You get the point, right? Yeah, you would get the point.
Yeah.
So I always tell them, okay, never mind. Maybe you can't do it because you're in so much pain. Well, give the scalpel to your spouse. No. All right, so...
I might not come back from that one.
You might not. So the question becomes, why don't you just do it yourself?
Right.
Well, because you've never been trained.
Right.
And the problem in most organizations, where Gallup says 82% of the selection of the next supervisor or manager, they pick the wrong person 82% of the time.
Wow.
82% of the time.
That's a big number.
It's a big number. So what they're doing with that is they're handing a sharp instrument to an untrained surgeon, the manager, and say, perform the operation. And the problem in organizations is it's not the manager that dies. It's the employee. So I'm committed to getting rid of those managers that are holding the scalpel and they've not been trained.
You ever heard the term ego is the enemy?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think when I heard you talk about CEOs and I heard them talk about the idea of modesty, that was one of the things that I think playing in that pool where you kind of get a lot of, where that ego just takes hold. And it's not, I think what you're saying is you like to hear we have a problem, not I have a problem with them.
Correct.
Or they have a problem, right? And that's a barometer for you in order to do that. So, okay, I'm a bad boss.
Yeah.
My organization is bad in some way. My management team's bad.
They're struggling.
Right, they're struggling. How do you teach a bad boss to then become a good leader?
Well, in the last 5 years, I started studying leadership when I was 16. It just became an interest of mine, and I've been studying it.
Interesting hobbies. I mean, 16, I'm probably playing basketball or, going to the movies, girls, I mean, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you were studying leadership.
I was studying leadership.
Okay.
I was doing the other things, too.
Okay.
And then I got interested in...
You didn't want to leave the fun out.
I didn't leave the fun out.
Okay.
And I played sports, and I became a supervisor at a restaurant, and then I got a degree, the first person in my family to get a degree, and I went into the Army as an officer and had the opportunity to lead a unit. And
you were super young. You were like
25 years old, I was a commanding officer.
Wow.
And I learned a lot in the military that people don't understand.
You had a 10-year head start from 6. You learned that leadership.
Yeah.
You brought that with you. So.
And having family, my 3 older brothers and my dad, who were all enlisted in the Navy and then became officers, taught me to keep my mouth shut and listen to my sergeants. I was their boss.
Right.
But I would walk in and say, so, Sergeant, how do you want to handle this? And learn from them. And by listening and asking the question and respecting their experience over time,
Right.
it allowed me to learn a tremendous amount about leadership over time. Because most people in the military, the only thing you see in the military is boot camp and wars. And 98% of your service in the military has got nothing to do with that.
Interesting.
It has to do with relationships, it has to do with friendships, and it has to do with IGYB. And we teach this in organizations. IGYB, I've got your back. That's what you learn in the military. And when you can create a culture in a business
Right.
that says IGYB, you're creating a culture committed to the purpose and the mission of the organization, and that starts from the inside out. Every single individual needs to be committed and understand what their mission is so that they can connect to the mission of the organization and then have each other's back as they work towards goals as a team.
So, next question: what happens if you don't see the mission, or the mission is outdated, as I like to say? So, I think a lot of people, you've heard of Ron Popeil.
Yeah.
You know, so
Sure.
he did the rotisserie.
Yeah.
But more importantly, he actually trademarked the term "set it and forget it."
Yes.
And would you agree that a lot of organizations sometimes set that mission because they said you had to have one. They set their mission statement, but they didn't ever take another look at it.
Sure.
20 years later or 30 years later. Well, how do you go in and work? How does that play? Because you mentioned connecting missions. How does that all play together and connect?
It's really not that complicated. You know, you ask the leadership team, what's your mission? And they'll all give you a different answer.
Right.
So I know that they're not using it.
Right.
It's really pretty simple.
Or the worst one, I don't know. All right, for sure.
I've had this. We have one somewhere around
Yeah.
here. You know, and they start looking under their chair or something,
Right.
you know? So we dust it off and we say the first thing we're going to do is we're going to help the executive team understand, know, and embody this mission statement and hold you accountable to the mission and the values of the organization. So we bring it to light. And our leadership program, our 9-month leadership program, is founded in the organization's mission and values. We start with that on the very first day. So we start to recreate that culture within the organization that takes the mission and the values out into the field or out into their offices every single day. It's inside out. You can't take care of your customers if you don't take care of your employees. Leaders can't take care of their employees if they don't take care of themselves.
Right.
It's got to be inside out. And that starts with the mission within and the mission of the organization being aligned and then taking that out.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to get to your book, A CEO's Journey, in just a second. But I'm curious, as we talk about bad bosses, right?
Yeah.
Your goal is, right, to go from bad to good leaders.
Yeah, yeah.
What happens, though, when you go into an organization and that boss doesn't think they're bad? How do you get people to see that?
Why do you think I start with the CEO? You see, here's the thing, is if I work with somebody for a year and they're just not getting it, first of all, it doesn't usually take a year. It usually takes about 2 months.
Okay.
And it's not about them being successful or unsuccessful. It's about where their heart is. It's about where their soul is. Do they really care about the people? Do they really care about the mission of the organization? Are they loyal to it?
Right.
If we start there and they are, we'll try to find a place for them. In some cases, I'll get rid of the bad boss by getting them out of a management or a leadership position into an individual contributor's position.
Okay.
Because they're still right for the organization.
How do you sell that program?
That's why I start with the CEO.
Okay.
There are situations where I've gone in and worked with executives and say, you need to get rid of that guy. It doesn't take long to figure it out. And I think I heard somebody say earlier today when they were talking about it, everybody around you already knows where your flaws are.
Right.
Everybody around the organization knows who that person is that I consider a black hole of emotional sucking that takes all this energy from other people.
Right.
Okay? And sometimes they're even your most productive people, but they're negatively impacting 8, 10, 15 other people.
Right.
I can't tell you the number of times we get rid of that one person. Productivity goes up, energy goes up, happiness goes up, and the CEO says to me, man, we should have done that sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that sometimes people honestly know the answer? They know what they should have done, but they just didn't do it or didn't get it done to do
Absolutely.
it. Didn't want the responsibility to do
Absolutely.
it. You know? Okay.
And I'm able to come in as an outside
Yeah.
voice. And I will tell the CEO, we're going to go down this path, and I'm going to tell you my truth as I see it. I'm not saying it is the truth.
Right.
I'm just going to give you my opinion, my truth as I see it. And sometimes it's going to hurt. And I actually will tell them, I use the quote from Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay.
Yeah, brace yourself.
Remind me. Okay.
Okay?
Gotcha.
I say to the CEO, brace yourself. Oh, this is bad. I've actually had Prentice Baker, the owner of Baker Roofing Company, I'll walk in the office and I'll start to close his door and he goes, what have I done now? Okay. Now, this is a man who is in his mid-70s who's done an amazing job with this company. And sometimes he fears me walking in the door and I'm going, no, it's not bad. It's good. Oh, okay. Now, it's kind of fun because I get to have that relationship.
Because you play with it too, right?
I
So,
do.
Yeah, exactly.
I do.
See, I got you.
We have fun.
So, CEO's journey.
Yes.
7 steps to intentional leadership.
Yeah.
What drove the book? What am I going to find when I crack that open?
Well, years ago, when I started some different parts of this journey, I read some of Ken Blanchard's books, and now Patrick Lencioni's books, and they're parables, they're stories.
Right.
My first book, Mastering Sales Leadership: Learning to Herd Cats, is kind of a self-help book on sales leadership.
Okay.
And it took me 4 years to write it. And as I got into this one, I realized that, gee, I want to follow Patrick and Ken's approach to this and write a story. So it really is a story of a CEO that's struggling.
Okay.
And he gets coached by a former boss of his who was an executive, a woman who was an executive boss of his from years before, and he calls her up and says, I need your help.
Okay.
And in that coaching, which is the most important thing you can do as a leader to develop, is get a coach, is she coaches him through the 7 steps of intentional leadership. Okay. This 7 steps is really the culmination of almost 50 years of studying on my part. Wow. And what I've been able to do...
We know you started early.
30 years. What I've been able to do is take this really complex topic of leadership and break it down into these 7 steps with 3 components within each that you could look at this and say, how am I doing? So these 7 steps are a way of looking at your own leadership capabilities and say, this is what I need to work on.
Got it.
Yeah.
Most important question.
Yeah.
How do we get our hands on the book?
Right now, it is available on my website, on my homepage at statarius.com.
Spell that out.
Statarius. Okay, I admit, I took Latin in high school and Catholic school.
You think?
Statarius is Latin for to stand firm.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, good. See, I'm glad you just helped more people that said, I wonder what that... Anybody else go, I wonder what that stood for? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think it's going to be a great read, a fantastic book from a fantastic individual. Gary, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks a lot, Corey. Appreciate it.